Michael Carson.
Holly Ann Mitchell. Hello.
Hello. I remember when we met in our hypnosis
Mhm.
training.
I remember that too. We were front row buddies.
We were the
Yeah,
nerds in the class.
we were. I think we still are. I think it's going to happen again.
Nerds rule. Nerds rule.
Yes. Yes.
Were you a nerd? Were you a nerd when you were a kid?
Oh, yeah.
Mega nerd.
Absolutely. Mega nerd. Yeah.
What's like give me one nerdy thing from childhood.
Well, my goodness. I'd say all of my life's experiences were processed through the Star Wars soundtrack, to be honest. Okay, how about you? I went. Were you a nerd?
Okay. All right. Well, we'll just both embarrass and then we'll be even.
Yeah.
I used to eat lunch alone in the yearbook room, like
Oh,
all the time, all the
yeah.
time.
I can relate. Yeah, I used to like to stay in from recess to clean out my desk. It's just quieter there.
It is. It is. I worked for the English teacher, so I spent all my
Ah,
time in the newspaper yearbook English room, and I graded
uh-huh.
I graded my classmates' papers.
Well, that's some real power. And see, it doesn't surprise me given just earlier you told me how you've been really enjoying some writing in your life now.
Yes, I know you're quite the writer as well.
I try.
So we've come together around this idea of the brain in the
Mhm,
body,
mhm. That's
and
right.
we talked about what we want to get out of this, and I'd actually like to share our intentions for
I
our
think that's great.
conversation.
Yeah.
uh, so I started first with my intention was
Hmm.
around the idea of trust, and that I would like for myself to come through this conversation with a better understanding of that which I already know, which is how to
Hmm.
trust myself
Hmm.
in the world. And that by
Hmm.
trusting myself, trusting my body,
Hmm.
that I will heal myself and my body, and that by trusting myself, I will heal other bodies
Hmm.
when I trust
I
my body.
really, yeah, I'll share my intention here in a moment, but I really appreciate that intention as a frame of trusting the body. Um, because, you know, how much of your life happened before you were even paying attention to what you were doing? Probably 7, 8, 9 years. How many animals are out there that have no brain that somehow manage to survive and care for their young? And so there is an innate intelligence in your body and, any body. And it's a very brave intention to set in this world that is very much about, kind of understanding and making sense of and being able to explain ourselves. And that trust part, you kind of just have to sometimes put a pause on this. I have to understand why I'm feeling how I'm feeling. I have to be able to justify why I'm deciding what I'm deciding. Sometimes when it comes to the body, the body just knows, and it might not quite line up with what you thought you
Oh, that's hard
knew.
when that happens. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And so I thank you for that intention, Holly. And I'll share that my intention is also to kind of share the truths that I found in my own work and research around the body and the mind, and the body mind really is how we think of it. Um, because I think that a lot of folks have been, just because of the way our world is, have been kind of locked out of that information. And it just, we talked about being nerdy earlier. This is the thing I'm now nerdy about. This is what I think about. It's what I do. And so to have the space to share that is something I'm really grateful for. And just my intention is to share how this has helped me, and also, how you can take some information about not only how the mind and the brain and the body are connected, but how there isn't a brain in the body. There's a body mind. It's one thing. And that's kind of my intention here, is just to be able to share, and hopefully too to get some feedback from folks that do listen and do explore this topic, because um, I find that I learn so much by the things that people think that I didn't even think of as I'm teaching this kind of stuff. So, yeah, really happy to be here with you, Holly.
And in this moment of uncertainty that we are living in,
Yeah.
and yet every moment is uncertain, right?
Hmm.
Inherently, we are uncertain, but I think we've forgotten, and now there's this collective awareness around uncertainty, and
Yeah.
we try to think our way through it, and we try to put language, like you said, justify our
Hmm.
experiences. And I'm such a language nerd, right? I worked for the
Yeah.
English teacher, I'm a writer, and so I'm often looking for words to describe what I think I know
Hmm.
and understand.
Yeah.
And it's a, it's a useful skill, it's a muscle that I've come to trust. I've come to trust that part. And when the world is in a place where there may not be words for the
Hmm.
experiences, how can we rely on other intelligence inside of ourselves to choose
Hmm.
not just where to go, but who we want to be as we're on our path to get there. So I
Yeah.
think
And
there's a lot of relevancy to using skills.
just a little bit.
Just a
Yeah.
little.
If folks aren't convinced at this point, and one of the whys behind just this topic of embodied cognition, or how thinking and processing is taking place in the entire body, and like what about that is significant. We were talking earlier before we started this webinar that the human nervous system is primarily us sensing ourself. And it's not just the five senses that we learn about growing up in school of, sight and taste and sound. That only really is composed of maybe 20% of our nervous system or so. Depends on how you look at it, but primarily the nervous system is our body sensing itself. Do we have enough water? Are we breathing enough? Do we need to rest? Um, and the rest we'll talk about during this conversation. But this idea that you stated there, I just want to kind of point out for our listeners that we do have inner resources. We have about 100 million neurons in our gut. We have about 50,000 neurons in our heart. And yes, we have 100 billion in our brain, but many of them go right from our brain down to like our big toe. They're spread out throughout the whole body. One of the things I work on my clients with as a coach is weight loss. And just one of the things I talk about there is that, even just pockets of fat in the body, cellulite, whatever you want to call it, that we don't like it. Actually, research is showing that like 8 to 10% of that mass is neurons.
Oh,
It's our body is thinking, and when we're just in our head, when we're not taking small steps, when we're not engaging in activities, when we're just having thoughts about thoughts, that's what's happening. We are taking 100% of who we are as embody mind, and we're kind of like squeezing the hose. So there's only a trickle of processing. Um, and so I just say that to sort of open the frame that um, whenever we think we're like figuring things out, especially about the future, especially when it's uncertain, what we also might inadvertently be doing is restricting the amount of cognition, the amount of consciousness, the amount of processing, the amount of information that's happening in our body. And it's not even just the gut and the heart, neurons in fat tissue. There's neurons everywhere, and there's information stored everywhere in the body. So that kind of tunnel vision that a lot of us can get just working all day on a computer or writing or reading, it puts us in this 20% of our processing phase. It
what
kind of
where
taps us out.
where does that happen? How do we lose touch with the smart parts of us in our stomach and in our heart, right? How do we get trapped in only 20% of our processing?
Well, there's a couple of ways to look at that. And as someone who was I think in the field of education directly for about 10 or 11 years, I'll tell you that school was a big part of that.
Mm.
And I'll tell you that television and, I'm not like an anti everything kind of person, but that a lot of what our culture is built on, this constant engagement in different ways, and sort of being put on paths, not necessarily um, not necessarily always having the time to consider it kind of creates habits, right? It kind of sets up our neurology to be a little bit anxious or a little bit stressed out or overwhelmed when we can't find the answer outside of us.
Mm.
And that's just kind of the way our culture works, for whatever reason, that um we have this go, go, go lifestyle. I just was reminded the other day of Michael Pollan, who is a wonderful science writer, written about food and all kinds of things. Um, wrote He had a little Audible thing that came out recently called, I think it's called Caffeinated or Caffeine. And there's this, pretty solid school of thought that even our culture as it is today, with this kind of 9 to 5 work life, it would have never happened had caffeine not been made readily available. That actually, yeah, it's a wild sort of dive into, whoa, what are we really doing?
Wow. Oh my gosh, that just challenged me in so many ways.
I love my coffee in the morning.
Yeah. And also my work days tend to be a lot longer than 8 hours. And the who am I being at the end of that, right? I think I might be operating on like little fumes of what Holly really is capable of, right? As far as like being able to hold space and create
Mhm.
things. Oh, that just challenged me a lot. Thank you for that. I always say the sign of a good coach is when you say thank you and screw you to the coach, because you get shaken up in so
Yeah,
many ways. When you were talking about the hose, and
yeah.
I was thinking about, I think a way I have experienced intuition, and I'd be curious to hear your definition of it,
Mhm,
right? Um,
mhm,
it's sort of like this little whisper inside of me.
mhm.
That's what it feels
Yeah.
like. It comes, sometimes it'll come from maybe below, right? Like maybe my stomach or
Mhm,
my gut, or sometimes it'll feel like maybe it's from
mhm,
my back, or it's
mhm,
coming from somewhere. It's whispering. It's telling me like, hey, what do you think? What do you really care about right now? Like, is this really important? And she's so soft, and she speaks
mhm.
so slowly that it's quite easy to just tell her, shh, shh,
Mhm.
I got stuff to do, right?
Yeah.
And the way that maybe when I was a kid, that your parents would shh you, don't talk back to me, or children should be seen and not heard, right?
Yeah.
And as I'm learning to develop greater trust with myself, there's this relationship between me and my whispering self,
Yeah.
that she has grieved all of the times where I didn't listen to her, because it isn't
Mm.
listening a form of love, to listen.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
You know,
we're getting to know each other again. We're
well,
getting to know each other. Yeah.
yeah. Well, yeah, and I know you to know that you are a very powerful shaman and spiritual teacher, and maybe that's not something that always comes out in your work, but I'm saying it. And
Just,
so this
you're
is a
gonna
great.
out me. You're outing me as a wise woman.
Well, it's about time someone did it, Holly. And everyone is a wise man or woman. And
That's
that's the thing,
true.
I was talking to someone yesterday about, or earlier this week. What day is it? I don't know. Earlier this week, about intuition, and she said something that I thought was interesting. She said, "Okay, so is it like we bury our intuition, we bury our body's intelligence?" And the thing about it is, it is not. It's not this personified thing that we think it is. That it's buried, or it's quiet, or it's hurt. There might be some feelings of hurt. There might be some kind of internal patterns and things to work through, but it's not buried, it's there. It's kind of, to use the metaphor of, back in the analog days, the radio dial, different information hangs out at different states of feeling. And that's kind of like the frequency of the information that's coming through our nervous system. So if you're not quite dialed into the channel of your intuition, you can hear it faintly. When you get that bleed, especially on the old AM frequencies, you can kind of hear, you're going between towns, right? You're going between states. You can hear the music from the next state, and you kind of hear the talk radio from the state you're in, and it's kind of over top of each other. And it's like, I think I can hear what they're saying. I want to hear the weather, but I can't quite. And so it's not so much that the whisper is something that is anything other than what can you do, or what can we do to bring ourselves into the state? Where can we dial into that station so that it's just right there? And that is just to set up the concept here. We talked about how, we live in this culture that is very much external facing. It's, what's coming at me? What am I going to put out there? There's all this stimuli. It can go from day to night. And even, it's been a journey for me, because I've been really trying to kind of live this stuff that I'm talking about. It's interesting, to live more intuitively. I'm like, oh boy, I'm learning a lot. But it pushes me to be a better teacher. But anyway, what I've discovered is there's so much that I think is relaxation that I do that isn't.
Oh,
There's
what is
so
that?
much,
What does that mean?
well, to me, to read a book about the nervous system, I'm sitting back and I'm relaxing, but really I'm engaging in the external world, and I'm still not tuned in. Now, there is kind of a thing called split attention, and I think you know about that, and how we can still be engaging in the external world while still being tapped in on the inside. But the concept I want to set up is this idea of, and I'm going to use the vocabulary. You don't have to remember it. It's just kind of to give you the frame. There's exteroception, and there's interoception. So exteroception is what everyone knows about. It's kind of been, pretty well hammered in. It's, sight, smell, touch, taste, and hearing, our external senses. And then there is, let's see, which hand here? Interoception. I'm like looking at myself backwards, like, oh boy, this is too much. Interoception, which is your body sensing itself.
Mm.
It is, when your stomach starts to growl, or you start, and it's like, oh, I need to eat. Or you start to get butterflies and you're like, okay, I have to prepare. Or you're feeling something in your heart when you meet a person and you're like, I have to get their number. Or you feel it in your gut and your heart, and it's like everything stops. And that sense of interoception, as I kind of mentioned earlier, in a lot of ways is the majority of what our nervous system is doing. And so that whisper is interoception. It is the body speaking.
Mm.
And, one of my favorite researchers, who I know Dr. Candace Pert, who discovered really how information and emotions move throughout the body, through our immune system, through the endocrine system, through the nervous system, and how that information actually gets from us, the cells in like your kidneys, to your nervous system, to your conscious awareness, as either, pain in the case of maybe a medical issue, or, if you look at the framework set up by, say, Chinese medicine, there's all kinds of wisdom associated, say, with the kidney. And so that information is coming up through the body, through the nervous system, into conscious thought when you're paying attention to it. It will like knock on the door hard if it's like a huge emergency. It's like when the appendix needs to come out, the body's going to let you know, right?
Yeah.
Just like when you're starting out your day and you're walking to work and you realize you forgot something, your intuition lets you know. But it's that ability to really start to calibrate your own self and to cultivate your own neural pathways such that they're paying attention, not to get slammed in the face with insider information, but to get that calm trickle when it's needed. When it's when your body's processing information and you're not paying attention to that, you're processing information up here, but there's a disconnect, and your nervous system is actually having to spend energy trying to translate signals and trying to run your body, and the pipe gets full. So interoception is sort of like a mechanism where intuition, or whether you want to call it intuition, whether you want to call it information, feelings, sensations, your body's knowledge, wisdom, and insight. Interoception is the mechanism, and things like mindfulness, things like self-hypnosis, things like meditation, however they are used in the day, or really even just the term out of mindfulness and action, not inaction, right? Inaction would be sitting around thinking all day, looking at a computer, kind of. And action would be, you know, okay, I've got this problem. I don't know how to solve it. I'm going to go for an hour walk. And how many people, and first of all, in the working world would go for an hour walk? But what happens when you go on that walk is you're shifting blood flow. You're shifting the functioning of your body, and you're speeding up respiration. You're telling the body it's relaxed, things are feeling good. Guess what information processing is going to happen?
There's more
100%
room.
body mind, right?
Yeah, there's
You're
more
engaging
room.
everything. Your body can't not process sort of differently on that walk. And it doesn't have to be a walk. It's whatever, sometimes cooking. Sometimes people, they're doing the dishes and they're relaxed and they're listening to music, and they're just, things start to pop.
That's like when you lost something and you're like, where
Yeah.
the heck did I put it? And then as soon as you stop thinking about it and you go do something else, you discover it, you remember where it is. I want to take a step back here and just give
Mm-hmm.
some of your story in this.
Please.
What is it that you do with this work? And why does this matter to you? What really drew you to this path that you're on now?
Well, I'll tell you, in terms of what I do, a lot of what I'm doing lately is, and I think of a quote from one of my teachers, John Overdurf, who is a coach and hypnotherapist. And one of the things he talks about is this idea that we can really learn how to coast on the natural tendencies of our nervous system. It's kind of like surfing your emotions. It's kind of like, am I positioned in a place where like there's a big wave that's going to come just crashing down on me in my life or in my day? Or can I just kind of get a sense of, where things are, and how can I just kind of surf that, so it's a little smoother. And so in terms of how I live my life, it's kind of been this interesting process of pulling a little bit away from the calendar, right? The Gregorian calendar that's not based on anything other than what a long time ago seemed to be a good way to organize things, and to get a little bit away from even clock time. That's not to say I don't make appointments. Obviously, I'm a coach, right? I have appointments. I have collaborations and things. But it's, how can I live my life in a way where, I'm on top of things, I'm responsible, I'm interfacing with society in a way that's productive, but I'm also giving myself the room to not really know exactly how everything's going to go, and to be surprised at how maybe something that I thought would be a frustrating project suddenly collapses into something that takes me like an hour and is a lot of fun. Because the more I notice, ooh, my body needs a walk right now, and I'm just, that thing that I told myself I had to get done today, I'm going to tell myself now I don't. And I go for that walk, and then 3 things get done or nothing gets done. But then it's this interesting thing. And so I'll tell you, I was working with a client over the weekend. I work as a professional coach. I work as a hypnotherapist, and I teach classes on intuition. And I also teach educators mindful learning. And I was working with a client, I think last week sometime, who very successful in her career, is pretty sure she likes her career. I have a lot of career-oriented clients that are sort of questioning work-life balance, or trying to work through personal issues, and the connection with that with career. And speaking of uncertainty, she's looking ahead at her career, and it's kind of like she just couldn't quite see things that she liked about her future. And that can creep up on us, right? That can creep up on you. You get so far down the tunnel of whatever it is that's present, that anytime that ends, or you're taken out of that because of life, it can feel this sense of hopelessness. There's not something pulling us forward. And so we did some work together on that. We talked a lot about how there's a downside to goal setting, for example, that when we set a goal, sometimes we keep trying to reach that goal and we don't notice all the conditions that have changed around us, right? If you set a goal last year about where you're going to be now this year and you don't change that, you're going to be really anxious and stressed, very likely. So we talked about how do you go beyond goal setting, and so we did some mindfulness, we did some sort of meditative exercises, and she came out of that and she said, it's not that I don't see those things that I wasn't excited about at all anymore. It's just that all of a sudden I see so many other possibilities that I hadn't considered. That even if that thing that I don't want to happen in my career happens, there's like 20 other things I just saw that are exciting to me that I just didn't even know were there. So it's really about, in terms of my work for myself and other people, it's how do we open the aperture? How do we let more of the light in to give us more information to make decisions? And I think we all know, I teach this a lot with a metaphor, right? A metaphor for life or work or the future is that you can go to a party. It could be the same party either way. You go to a party in a great mood, and it doesn't matter that the music's loud. It doesn't matter that you don't like the drinks, or maybe you don't drink at all. It doesn't matter that you don't know a lot of people. You go to that party in a good mood and you're like, ooh, I could meet some new friends, or maybe I'll network. Maybe I'll meet someone who I'm going to collaborate with. And well, I don't really like this music, but I'll just talk really loud and maybe I'll have tea when I leave to help my voice. And it's all going to be fun. You could go to that same party in a crummy mood, and what do you notice? You're like, I don't want to be here. The music's loud. I don't drink. I don't know anyone. What am I supposed to do with myself? And the only difference is you and the state that you're in and what information you're letting into your experience.
You get to
So
bring
that's
your okayness with you wherever you
that's right.
go. And
That's right.
that's pretty powerful to be able to help facilitate that for people. It reminds me of Tony Robbins' quote. He talks about achievement plus fulfillment, because
Mm-hmm.
what a lot of people, they hire a coach to for achievement, right? I have a
Mm-hmm.
goal, I want to get the goal, right? And as you said,
Uh-huh.
you may change in the process of achieving the goal. Just, be careful what you
Yes,
wish for.
that's right.
And achieving the goal, but then you get 5 seconds of pleasure and dopamine from
Mm-hmm.
achieving the goal before something else settles in, right? This feeling of,
Right.
oh, what's next? Right now I need a bigger goal because I'm still not where I need to be. I'm still not
Yeah.
enough. And I remember feeling that way a lot of times in my life until I understood the science of fulfillment.
Mm-hmm.
And it looks a lot different, but if you can marry the two, if you can find fulfillment and you can find your okayness and bring it with you wherever you go,
Yeah.
I said wherever you go, and actually that's true, wherever you go,
That's right.
that even if the goals and the circumstances change,
Yeah,
you still get to be you in it
that's
today.
right. And how amazing is that? To
That's
give yourself
pretty cool.
permission. Yeah, and I think, you and I talk about that in our lives and our work. This, it's kind of like when you're sharing with someone, I'm going to take a different direction. It can be a little bit scary or overwhelming at first, but the moment you realize it's your life, it's your work.
Yeah.
you know and I think, the phrase that was coming to my head when we were talking about goal setting here is like, I'm so in my head. I'm just in my head about this. I'm thinking about it, I'm talking about it. And how far do we go, down the path of being in our head, which kind of literally is that. When you're having thought, you're just in your head. And that thought about a thought about a thought about a thought, how far we kind of can habitually remove ourselves, because we want to be, project ourselves as being certain, and we want to explain to ourselves why we're doing what we're doing, because we have a plan, we have goals. And and that's not to say that all goal setting is bad. I mean, goals are good, at times and different purposes, but it's really nice to have that permission and flexibility to not pursue a goal, or to allow that goal to be what it needs to be in the moment, and to be mindful about that. And so, yeah, appreciate
One
your sharing too, Holly. I like
You're
that.
welcome. I feel Tony Robbins is present today because his quote, "In your
He's
head, you're
here.
dead." In your head, you're dead, he always says. And if you're in your head,
uh,
there's a lot of you have no access to.
Tony
It's asleep,
Robbins.
it's dead. I
Yeah.
I was thinking about how many of the clients that I work with, dentists and dental leaders,
Hmm.
they're struggling right now with making decisions
Hmm.
in a
Yes. As are many.
unforecastable world, right?
Yep.
How
Yep.
what's one thing that they can do? Because you said
Mhm.
that you're living this work, right? You're integrating this into your daily habits. So I like to give people
Mhm.
habits that they could start to
Yeah.
cultivate that might
Mhm.
bring some of this access to these other parts of their knowing online
Yeah.
as they're trying to make decisions. What's something that someone could do if they're trying to make a
Mhm.
decision and they're in
It's
their
a
head?
great question. Yes. Well, first of all, welcome to the club that I and many are a member of many times, making decisions in our head. As Tony Robbins says, in your head, you're dead. And uh, so there's certainly a lot that one could pull apart there, but the way what came to me, to be honest, was going back to that metaphor of tuning in the dial to the right station, right? And I kind of extended that metaphor a little bit in my head. And have you ever plugged something into like a big speaker before it's the right song or the right channel, and it's just like loud mess everywhere? So think of your decision making like figure out, like, for yourself, really know quietly inside before you amplify out. I think we're always, when it comes to making decisions, we are so ready to to put it out there because we have people who we want to know what the decision is. We want to be responsible. We don't want to have to we don't want to suffer. Sometimes the decision making process is like, I just want to be done with it. I don't want to feel it.
Oh yeah, I
So
try to make
yeah.
mine as quickly as possible because
Yeah.
I just get anxiety by hanging on to them. I don't know if they're good or bad decisions. I just make
Well,
them really fast.
right, right, and sort of that. I think the question that comes up often when decisions are being made is this a decision is this the anxiety deciding? Is this the
Mm.
uncertainty, the stress deciding? So if you're thinking that, the answer is probably yes. um, and and just anxiety in and of itself is an interesting thing because there's a mental part and there's a body part, right? When you're thinking about that decision and you're feeling anxious, it's probably because the thoughts you're having are actually not about the decision, but all the things that could go wrong if you made that decision. And the body part of the body mind is a simulator, and that the body is just going to create for you the emotions of the last time you made a decision like that and it didn't go well.
Mm.
And then, so what's going to be happening is you're going to be on this, it's recursive, it's a loop. Then you're noticing, man, I'm really anxious now. And then your brain is like, hey, remember this time you were anxious, and this time you were anxious, and this time. And you're just kind of like, what's going on? And so, what you really want to be in all of that is the I am voice, the voice of who you are, that voice that is often a whisper, that voice that rises above the thoughts, that's not engaging in the thoughts, that's not feeling the things, but that is noticing. You want to get to that place. And that's not all I'm going to say, because if that's all I had to say, we wouldn't be having this conversation because everyone would just stay up there. But how do you get to that place, right? How do you get to that place where the voice you're listening to is not the part of you that is anxious, but is the part of you that, in your case, that's Holly Mitchell, that has a loving family and loving relationships and a beautiful life and a wonderful company and an amazing career, that knows so much? How do you get to that place? Well, I mean, honestly, the first thing that I do, just very practically, is drop the back of my tongue. And I'm sure you probably teach this to folks you work with pretty often. Just let your tongue weigh heavy on your mouth. That's right. And you can do this as you're meditating or as you're pouring a cup of coffee. and maybe consider pouring less coffee. um, but when you let the back of your tongue just fall, like, you noticing that shift there, that, yeah. And I'm sure folks that are listening, if you don't even have to close your eyes. You can be driving a car. You can just let your tongue kind of fall heavy in the back of your mouth, and maybe the tip of your tongue in the front is touching the back of your front teeth. When you do that, you are disengaging the part of your brain that is verbal, right? When your tongue is poised to speak, the verbal center of your brain is churning. It's trying to figure out what it's going to say. It's trying to figure out what's going on, because the nervous system is assuming that you're like about to talk to someone. So it's kind of, the stakes are a little higher and you're in that state. That's the same part of your brain that is those spinning anxious thoughts. So that's kind of, we talked about how we are kind of conditioned to always be ready to respond. So if you just take your tongue and you let it weigh heavy, I can't remember, it's one of the 12 cranial nerves. It's not the vagus nerve, it's a different nerve that is being engaged here. It's like turning down the power on that part of your brain, the verbal center of your brain. It's going to maybe not stop your thoughts, but it's going to, the internal dialogue is going to start to sound more like my voice. And you can even be intentional about that. A quote from my friend Dan Ryan that I really appreciated was, when you're out in the world and you're struggling, talk to yourself in your head like you're talking to, like, your niece, your nephew, or your child, or someone you love. Letting your tongue weigh heavy will start to just slow things down. It'll start to give you more space.
Do you know what I experienced while I was doing that?
What's that?
Do you know that opening scene from Sound of Music, when it's like
Mm.
flying over the Austrian Alps, and then you can hear the sound of the wind in the mountains? It's like,
Yeah.
that's literally the image and the sound that came to me just by making that shift. And I don't know what that means. Maybe I need to put on a nun habit and run around in the hills.
Well, now that you're back in New York, you don't have that big garage. You need to be singing, my friend.
I think you're right. It's so funny because sound has always been a big part of how I relate to the world, and I know it is for you too as a musician.
Yeah.
And we often will message each other like, what song is coming up for you today, because music can be a way for our unconscious to communicate with us. So maybe that's it. Maybe all I need for the next decision is just to sing a little Edelweiss, and I'll be
There we go. Maybe you can be the lead out when we finish our conversation.
You got it. That's a very simple, easy thing to do, to just give yourself some space. I was thinking about when you were talking about the thought loop, the thoughts and the thoughts, and then the anxiety about the thoughts, and why won't these thoughts stop?
Yeah.
I came up with a really simple acronym for how to have a different relationship with the thoughts, because you're right. There's a me who's experiencing a thought, but there's a me who's watching me experience a thought.
That's right. Yeah.
So the me.
And how do you become that you? Yeah.
How do I become that you? Well, here's the acronym. You ready? It's WTF. What the fuck, right? It's WTF. The W stands for welcome. The T stands for thank you. Thanks for sharing. Thank you. And the F is farewell.
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 Right.
Welcome. Welcome, thought. Oh, that's an interesting thought. Thank you for sharing your thought.
I love that.
And I'm just going to bid you farewell, because I know this thought actually isn't me. I'm here.
I think everyone who's listening could use a reframe on WTF. Welcome, thank you,
farewell. And you can use that whether you're having an internal conversation or an external conversation with somebody who makes you think.
That's right. And by the way, because we are in this tunnel vision of all these conversations with people, that or even in real life when we're having a conversation with someone and we might be anxious, you can do things like, maybe not when you're talking, but while you're listening, let your tongue rest at the bottom of your mouth. You can pay just a little bit of split attention to your breathing. And you can just notice your breath in a conversation. Be like, wow, I'm really tense. So let your breathing start to slow down. I mean, that's really, breathing is I think one of the most powerful ways to change your state. It's, think about yoga and almost every mystical religious tradition. It's all about breath.
Mhm.
The tongue thing is nice to do as well. And there is a very little bit of speed up there, because literally your tongue is just closer to your brain. So the signal, the wire is shorter. But what you're doing, like Holly, you brought up that, we have the negative thought, we feel the negativity, then we observe the feeling in our body, and we have another, and it just creates this negative feedback loop. When you start to do anything with your body that creates a sense that is different than what you're feeling that you don't like, you begin to insert that into the feedback loop, and you can make that a positive feedback loop. Feelings, and you and I know this from right when we got to know each other, training with Melissa Tears last year, that emotions don't actually last very long biochemically. And even the research now, it's like less than 10 seconds. And most people would hear that, and they're like, so you're telling me that the panic attack that I have isn't real? No, I'm not saying that. It's real. But what keeps a feeling going is the observation of the feeling, because the body is stimulating the thought. That's another term in embodied cognition. We talked about exteroception, interoception, and there's proprioception. It's like when you're, if you're walking on the high beam, or you're, hiking in the woods and you're climbing on a log, and you don't think about your balance, but your body just stays upright. That's embodied cognition. That's your body adjusting to the environment and keeping homeostasis present. So when you think a thought, it doesn't matter if it's healthy or not for your body. Proprioception takes that and does it. It obeys.
Mm.
So you can just know the two things are happening when you drop your tongue, when you slow your breathing. The sequence I like is close the eyes if you can for a moment. Let the jaw drop, and you can do that too by itself. Let the tongue drop, and just notice breathing, not trying to change anything, experiencing the body. And you can practice this or any other really sort of meditation practice. And what you want to do as you practice it and teach your nervous system, you're creating the pathways for calm, for being more in touch with that whisper of intuition, that innate knowledge of your body. You're sort of slowing down the communication. You're opening the pipeline of your nervous system and allowing all parts of your body to start to work together, saving energy and allowing information to come up into the conscious mind. And you'll start to notice, if you practice these things, especially loosening the jaw and dropping the tongue, that you'll be going about your day. You'll get off a call, you'll put down a book, you'll finish a task, and you'll notice your body start to relax, and you'll catch it in a split second, and you'll be like, ah, body, thank you. And you'll just stay with it for just a moment or two. And you'll all of a sudden notice a shift in your feelings. You'll notice an insight that says, I don't need the hour I carved out for this thing. Why am I making it too complicated? I'm going to take a 20-minute break and then hit it hard and get it done. It's like pretty magical. And, you can start to integrate it into your life, because I think we don't need the body's knowledge and insight when we're meditating. We need it when we're in the boardroom. We need it when we're meeting with our staff. We need it when we're strategizing. We need it when we're on the phone with an angry customer. That's when we need our intuition, our body's knowledge, when we need interoception to call up the wisdom that we have. Your body is your unconscious, subconscious mind. And so when you let yourself engage with your breath, loosen your jaw, you're opening the pipeline, and you can access that stuff when you need it. It's cultivating your nervous system over time, and that's called self-directed neuroplasticity. And so every time you do something different to calm yourself down, you are interrupting whatever's happening that you don't like. Maybe not completely, but you're taking the edge off at least. What you're also doing is, over time, you are changing your neurology so that becomes your set point. So that, you look back over the month where, every day you took a few moments to kind of do what we did here, or you did your own thing. And then you're like, yeah, but my day was still stressful. But you look back at that month and you realize, well, you know what? The last day of this month was actually like, I was in a habit of being maybe like 10% less stressed out than I was the first day. And then 6 months later, it's like, wow, I'm only about 20, 30% the stress level. It's exponential than I was before. And actually, the stress that I'm feeling now is because I mindlessly filled up all that extra capacity with more work. And maybe I shouldn't do that. Maybe I could create, so there's power to it, because even though it might feel like you're doing less, you're producing less, you're engaging less, it's like, it's like showing up with your batteries full, right? It's like showing up with you've closed all the tabs on your computer, so this tab is going to run fast. It's going to be efficient.
I was thinking about the love languages, and my
Mm.
number one love language is quality time.
Mm.
And to learn how to trust myself, which was the intention that I started our call with, to remember what I already know is to trust myself.
Yeah,
And I need to spend quality time
that's
in
right.
my body, with
That's
my
right.
body,
With yourself.
with myself.
That's
So
right.
that, because trust, and it's, especially if that's your love language, that's how you build trust, is with your primary love language.
Yeah.
One of the practices that I've been doing is I've been doing Taryn Toomey's The Class,
Mm.
which is exercise using interoception, and the cues are always to stay in your body.
Mm.
And when I started doing the class, I realized how often when my body is uncomfortable doing difficult exercises, that I mentally go somewhere else
Yeah.
to cope, right?
Yeah.
What a useful skill it is to escape into your imagination, thinking about, the future, or remembering the past. It's a useful coping mechanism.
Mm-hmm.
But when it's your default, and you haven't been able to stay home and stay with your body, you're telling your nervous system that to be with myself actually isn't safe.
That's
And
right.
that practice has really shifted my awareness, not
Mm.
just in my meditation time, right? But as you said, like when I'm working with people, there's more resources available inside.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
I think that the work that you do is transformative for people. And there have been sessions that I can attest to, that you and I have done together, that you have changed my life in so many ways,
Oh,
not just as a hypnotherapist, but as a friend. And I'm so grateful to have you and to have had this time to share with you.
yes. Thank you, Holly. We're so grateful for you too, and all that you've done to contribute to my life in big ways. Thank
Thank you,
you.
Michael. How can people find you?
So my website is, and maybe we can put it in the thing, is carsonintegrativecoaching.com. And you can find me there. I have a blog there as well, where I write about this kind of stuff and host videos. And you can get in touch with me there if you want to set up a consultation for coaching, or to learn more about some of the classes or custom workshops that I can do for you or your organization.
If there's one thing that you'd like people to take away from this conversation about the body mind, what would that be?
Thank you for asking that question. And there was one thing that I didn't say that I wanted to say, and I think it's it. So I think my body's been working for me this whole time. And it's that the body knows the answer to things, typically, you know, always a half a second before your thinking does. Your thinking is always a little bit behind, but in some cases, the body knows the answer 5 seconds, 10 seconds, 15 seconds, even it's been proven 20 seconds ahead of actual information coming in. The body knows the answer, it has the information. So when you are going about your day, when you're meditating, when you're walking somewhere, you're listening to music, whatever it is, all you really need to do is pay attention to what that was reflexive. That was automatic. That was my body slowing down my speech so people would hear me, which is funny. We have good rapport. The body knows ahead. And if you're just paying attention to the sensations in your body for a moment or two, you're noticing the soreness and maybe you rub it a little. You're noticing this, like your legs are ready to move, whatever, you're noticing the sensation in your gut. And you're not thinking about it. You're not being like, oh, I'm so sore. Oh, I'm so hungry. Or, oh, I need to move. You're just noticing it. And if you can take a moment to loosen your jaw, drop your tongue. If you're just noticing your body, you're going to change the thinking that happens next. You're going to allow your body, with that pause, to allow more information processing to occur, to allow embodied cognition with 100% or close to that of your neurology to occur instead of just what's up here. So it's really crucial to give yourself the gift of like a pause, of like, you can be 5 seconds late to something. You know, you can give yourself 2 minutes to just breathe and notice the sensations in your body. And if that's something that's not a part of your practice, don't do it too often. Don't do it too long. Just give yourself a moment or two here and there so that over time you can kind of chip away at that disconnect. You can kind of start to teach your neurology how to feel safe in your body. And the immediate benefit you're going to get is, I can't tell you how it's going to change the next moment, but it's going to expand what you think is possible the more you practice that. So that is my advice, is to just give yourself those moments throughout the day. No one else is going to do it for you.
I feel more expansive already. And maybe we can sing a little Edelweiss, Edelweiss.
There we go. A little concert there.
Thank you again, Michael.
Thank you, Holly.
Be well.
Thank you, everyone, for listening. You too.